It's great to be in the SEC. Welcome back to another episode of the SEC Recap Podcast. I am your host, Ben Warren. Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, put on your tinfoil hats because my God, do we have some stuff to get into today. It has been one of the most eventful news weeks in college football that I can remember. A lot of stuff coming out of the University of Michigan. We're gonna kind of dive into all of that as much as possible here in the first segment. Second segment, we'll get into last week's recap and the power rankings, and in the final segment, we'll of course look at this weekend's matchups in the SEC. Man, if you have not been following, let me give you the TLDR. Let me catch you up on what's been going on. So, big leaks coming out of Michigan. A staffer by the name of Connor Stalions has been suspended amidst a newly opened, ongoing circumstances, kind of hazy around how this all got started. But a sign stealing network run by this analyst, Connor Stalions, at the University of Michigan. Guy's been on staff like a handful of years, 3-4 years maybe. And he was basically the kind of that on-field analyst, guy watching the sideline, looking to pick up signals, see what he could read and see what kind of advantage you could get in game, which is not by any stretch of the imagination illegal. Every team has people who do that. That's why you see, see them cover up their play callers with big screens or curtains or whatever, and try to disguise signals as much as possible, because every team knows that every team is doing that. Well, what this guy was doing was buying tickets to every Big Ten opponent that Michigan was going to play, as well as non-conference opponents, Tennessee, Georgia, Clemson last year, and then transferring those tickets to other people who would go sit and then record the other team's sidelines. Now, that's the part that makes this dubious, right? You cannot use electronic means to record and pick up signals. So that it's cell phones, microphones, any electronic device. That's where you cross that line, as well as the in-person scouting rule. So not only was this guy going, and other Michigan staffers presumably were going in person, they were sending other people. They were buying tickets, presumably funded in some part by the University of Michigan. Who knew about it? Man, we're going to find out soon. But then they transferred these tickets to people in this network. Those people would then go set up there across the sideline, often one person on each side, recording the other team's sideline in the case of some of these Big Ten games. And then they would, give this video to him. This guy would, take it all, analyze it, and then presumably print out laminated sheets or somehow coordinate with other people on that Michigan staff as to what the offensive and defensive signals were. So that kind of catches you up. Now, how all of this got started, there's a lot of questions. Supposedly there's an inside firm investigating Michigan already for something, maybe the in-person recruiting violations that kind of got the ball rolling on this earlier in the season. Maybe some Michigan insiders who aren't happy with Harbaugh for whatever reason. It's really looking more and more that this is shaping up to be an inside job. But this isn't even where the conspiracies come into play. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. So more and more information has been dripping on this daily. And let me just kind of pull this up here. If you're on YouTube, or even if you're on Spotify, you can catch this in video form. If you're just listening, please go to the YouTube page and check this out, because I'm going to pull up some articles, some tweets, some other things as we go through this. And if you haven't seen this yet, really going to want to see this. This is a story from an outlet called The Football Scoop, fairly reputable. This started circulating yesterday, starting to detail how Connor Stalions wrote this 500-page Michigan manifesto. And let me just before I go any further into this, if you're a 20 something white man, please, for the love of God, do not call anything that you write a manifesto. Has any good ever come from a young white man writing a document that he calls a manifesto? I honestly don't think so. There's call it a Google Doc, call it a novel, call it anything but a manifesto. That is not a term you want to use because as history goes back and looks at this in hindsight, or as future us looks at this in hindsight from a historical perspective, I don't think you want manifesto being used in the same sentence as anything that you did. So this 5 to 600 page document called his Michigan Manifesto detailing like his plan, his 15-year plan to one day run the Michigan football program with several of his friends, I guess, that were in low-level staffing positions at other football programs. I don't know if names are named. I haven't actually seen this. But the football scoop goes into detail about this guy's clearly what is an obsession about Michigan football. And then they put out this other story that kind of illuminates a little bit more of how deep and complex the different facets to this sign stealing operation were, to the extent that he was possibly sharing this information with future opponents of Michigan's future opponents. That is to say, were Michigan to make the college football playoff, who might they face? They were sharing some of this signal information with opponents of Georgia, perhaps, opponents of Clemson, perhaps, opponents of Tennessee, perhaps. And this is where the conspiracy train really starts to pick up steam. I'm going to share with you another, again, take this for a grain of salt, guys. I'm not even saying that I fully believe this, okay? But this has started circulating on Twitter last night into today. This is from the r/Florida Gators, the @Gators Reddit Twitter account. You could follow me on Twitter at SEC Recap. Always keep it right up here on the screen. Um, of all places, but Twitter is so great. The internet is so great about taking the little drips and pooling it all together to try to start to pick up this narrative. So this account says, surprise Vol Twitter isn't running with this more. The week following this alleged scouting, the South Carolina defense wore wristbands for the first time all year. He's talking about the Tennessee-South Carolina game. Would not be the first time that Shane Beamer has gotten into trouble for accepting and using stolen information. Now, this was on the back of the story by Trey Wallace, and several people were reporting on this, where it was a Tennessee fan on the VolQuest message board named Arnie Palmer Alert that actually, back in 2022, knew about and dropped information about this Michigan scouting scheme. So here's the tweet, or here's the post rather, in question, where in response to something, this guy says, "Oh, do I have a story on that? One of my little brother's friends," end quote, "is a scout," end quote, "for them," meaning Michigan. "They paid for him to travel to the UT Vandy game," parentheses, "had planned it before the loss." He's talking about when Tennessee lost to South Carolina. So Connor Stalions, whoever was coordinating this, had sent somebody in this network, or was planning on sending somebody in network to the UT Vandy game, presumably for signals. So we don't know if there was scouting of Tennessee for signals ahead of the South Carolina game, but more on that here in just a little bit. He goes on to say he's from Nashville originally, so he just went anyway, even after our loss, since it was Thanksgiving. Says he and the others are never allowed to talk to Harbaugh directly about it. And then a month or so later in January, he goes back and he says a little bit more about this. Now, here's the story from Football Scoop in reference to Shane Beamer previously being linked to, receiving information about opponents. Sources told Football Scoop this week that the Wolverines had scouted SEC foes, including Georgia and Tennessee, as potential college football playoff adversaries. Moreover, a source with direct knowledge indicated to Football Scoop that Michigan may have attempted to assist the opposition of a potential CFP opponent in an effort to disrupt that team's potential path to a playoff. So Vol Twitter, and if you have not been on Vol Twitter, it's Vol Twitter's world. The rest of us are just listening to it, or the rest of us are just living in it. They have taken this and run with this. So this account, r/Florida Gators at Gators Reddit, posts this video to go along with this information. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play the audio here.
South Carolina defense is doing something they haven't done all season, using wristbands. All the players have a wristband. They're trying to quickly get up after the play is dead. Look at this sideline. Some are checking the wristbands. Some just know the calls off the top of their head. About 13 calls on those wristbands. It was the players' idea. They knew they had to be ready to go quickly play to play.
It is interesting how the players came to Clayton White, the defensive coordinator, with that idea. And now they get to Hooker.
South Carolina defense is doing something they haven't done.
So, again, please go over to my YouTube at SEC Recap. Watch this clip or follow me on Twitter. I've retweeted this at SEC Recap on Twitter. And while you're there, smash the thumbs up, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. The announcer, who I believe in this case is, I think it was Holly Rowe, was describing, and this is a play. It's still, let's see, I think early in the game.
South Carolina defense.
It's still the first quarter. South Carolina is leading 14-7. Tennessee is on offense and they're driving. So Holly Rowe starts commenting that all the South Carolina defense are wearing these wristbands with some kind of plays or something. We don't really know what's on them. You can't really pick it up from the video. And she's saying this is the first time all year that they've done that. Now that's meaningful, right? Because if Tennessee was scouted ahead of this game, which we don't know that. We know they were intended to be scouted at the UT Vandy game because they're still a potential college football playoff contender up to this point. Presumably, if they were scouted before this and that information was shared with South Carolina for some reason, the defense would then have Tennessee's offensive signals, which was pretty much what Connor Stalions did. They were picking up offensive signals so that their defense could get an advantage and know what the offense was going to run. Now, on this particular play, as they're detailing that they've never done this before, this is the first game all year that the defense decided they wanted to wear wristbands. At least that's the story they're reporting, right? They start to say that the players came to Clayton White with this idea. And I'm sure that's what the coaching staff, told the media. South Carolina gets pressure. They get through the offensive line and they sack Hendon Hooker. Now, that play could go 1,000 different ways. Was that a result of knowing exactly what play Tennessee was going to run? Not necessarily. And I'm not suggesting that it is. But really what is more interesting is the commentary in light of the final portion of this tweet shared by @Gators Reddit. It says, and this is from 2016. This is well documented, not new. Shane Beamer, while he was an assistant at Virginia Tech, received info from Wake Forest. This was infamously referred to as WikiLeaks, by the way. And this was after he had left Virginia Tech and he was on staff at Georgia. So it says, Georgia has fined assistant coach Shane Beamer $25,000 for accepting leaked game plan information 2 years ago while at Virginia Tech from a former Wake Forest assistant coach who has been fired from his job as a radio analyst. So it was some kind of phone call where this guy had called Shane Beamer and shared a handful of plays. I'm not really sure. I don't remember the exact details. And then Shane Beamer never did that to authorities. He just sort of took that information. It's not clear whether they even acted on it. He says he didn't. But Georgia took it upon themselves to kind of admonish and charge him the fine. And it was all kind of gone, ipso facto. The connection here is that South Carolina's current defensive coordinator under Shane Beamer has been Clayton White, who was John Harbaugh's defensive backs coach at Stanford. Now, that's a pretty loose connection. Again, I'm not reading too much into it. But that's the connection. Now, here's the interesting part. As a part of this thread, at Gators Reddit says, one correction on this timeline, the Tennessee-Kentucky game is the one that was scouted prior to facing South Carolina and prior to facing UGA as well. So he corrects himself that it was not UT Vandy, it was Tennessee-Kentucky, which happened ahead of the South Carolina game. Ross Dellinger reports in this tweet, last October, Connor Stalions bought a single ticket to Tennessee's game versus the University of Kentucky. 3 minutes later, he transferred it to a person who attended the game in a seat facing the Vols sideline. He also bought tickets to UGA, Bama, Clemson, and the last two SEC title games. Drip, 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 drip. There is a lot here. Now, I'm not wearing my tinfoil hat. I think all this stuff is really fun. Vol Twitter is really running away with this, with the notion that South Carolina somehow took some of this information from Connor Stalions in an effort to derail Tennessee's path to the college football playoff because they were already a one-loss team. One more loss would, of course, knock them out, and that's what happens. What makes this suspicious is that South Carolina, Spencer Rattler in particular, had really been below average, subpar garbage all season up to this point. They got blown out the week before at Florida, 38-6. Spencer Rattler, I think, on the season had 10 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, maybe 12 interceptions. I don't know. I'm not even going to bother to look up the stat because anybody paying attention last season knows how garbage South Carolina was up until the Tennessee game, when all of the defensive players had this spectacular idea that they wanted to wear wristbands for certain play calls. And then Tennessee goes in to Willie B, and South Carolina hangs 63 points. Couldn't really stop Tennessee. Tennessee still put up 38 or so. But South Carolina, who hadn't scored more than, mid-30s all season, got blown out against Florida, got blown out on the road against Arkansas. Hangs 63 points on Tennessee. Got just enough stops on defense versus, at the time, the number one offense in college football. It's sus. S-U-S. It's sus. What do you make of it? I sure don't know. I don't know that I believe it all, guys. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm really not, but it is interesting. It is really, really, really interesting. And now, of course, a lot of people are reporting on this on Twitter. And it's unfolding as we speak. So I'm sure this drip is going to turn into a trickle, which is going to turn into a stream, which is going to turn into a river, which will turn into a flood here very shortly. This is all happening extremely fast. It seems to be happening intentionally. And I think there's zero chance, listen to me, zero chance that other coaches, including Harbaugh, did not know about this. And I think that there's zero chance that this information was not shared with other programs. Now, to the extent that the intention was to derail certain teams from making the college football playoff, No. But if the network was this wide and they were basically just hiring yokels in local towns to go to these games and film the games and share this information and publicly Venmo them, I don't think this was kept under wraps that tightly. It's almost certain that this information was shared. College football coaches talk, analysts talk, these low-level staffers, they know people in other programs, they share information of teams that they play. I'm certain that if he was taking this, some of it got out because these people videoing this aren't exclusively sending it to him. They're in possession of that content. They can send it to whoever they want, probably for a certain price. And every team has people on it who sit and try to decipher these signals from television broadcasts, live games, etc. Whew. All right, let's take our tinfoil hats off and we'll wrap up this segment with a new piece of merch I'm rolling out here just for this. If you listen to the podcast or watch on YouTube, I've got great SEC Pride merch on my store, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. I am rolling out this beauty exclusively here. It is my football sideline investigator t-shirt. If you're not watching on Spotify or YouTube, please go check this out. Check it out on my Twitter. Link will be in the description on the podcast as well. But my FSI t-shirt, football sideline investigator with the University of Michigan badge in the style of the FBI t-shirts. You can get it in classic t-shirt, pullover hoodie, classic long sleeve tee, in none other than Michigan colors, of course. And if you use promo code CHEATERS, all caps, CHEATERS, you can get 10% off any order of these Michigan FSI football sideline investigator t-shirts. Head on over, check those out. It just helps me out, support the pod a little bit. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys. All right. Whew. Let's wrap up that segment and let's get back to some SEC matchup talk. We're going to do our quick recap because I don't want to run too long here from week 8. I went 3 for 5. I'm sitting back at 50% on the year for my against the spread picks. And we'll start with the first game, Mississippi State at Arkansas. Arkansas was a 6-point favorite. Oh, surely hit, man. Arkansas needed to win that game so bad. It was a home game. They were a 6-point favorite. And the final score was Mississippi State 7, Arkansas 3. I just don't even know what to say about that. Of course, that was a miss for me. It was a huge miss for Arkansas. Sam Pittman's seat is as hot as ever. Great win for Mississippi State, though. Good for Zach Arnett and those guys, man. That was an awful game to watch. Awful. Terrible. Some of the worst football I've probably watched all year. But good for Mississippi State. The afternoon game was the third Saturday in October, infamously. Tennessee at Alabama. Tennessee was a 9.5-point dog. I did think Tennessee would cover that spread. They came out like some dogs, man, punched Alabama in the mouth. They spent that whole first half clearly looking like the better team. And then Alabama just stormed back, did Alabama things, overcame that deficit to put 27 unanswered points on the Vols to win. Alabama covered the 9.5 and hit the over at 49. So that was a huge miss for me. Then we had South Carolina at Mizzou. South Carolina was a 7-point dog. Mizzou ends up winning 34-12. South Carolina falls to 2-5 on the season, 1-5 on the year. Gamecocks look like game trash. I don't see any turnaround for them this year. It's looking very possible they maybe have 2 winnable games left on their schedule, Vanderbilt and Jacksonville State, but Jacksonville State ain't a bad team, and Vandy can still score some points. So Uh, those are probably their best shot. I don't see them winning on the road at A&M. We'll get into that here in the last segment. Um, Mizzou's looking great. 7-1, 3-1 in conference. I still don't think they have a super impressive conference win or win overall. I mean, what's their best win? Maybe Kansas State, maybe Kentucky on the road. Their best win should have been LSU, but they let that one go. So Tigers are playing great. I'm still not completely sold that they're this dream team. I think they're going to get exposed against Georgia when they play. But they're off this week and they got some downtime. Much deserved. Credit to them. Mizzou Tigers are playing great. Next game, we had Ole Miss at Auburn. Ole Miss 6.5-point favorite. Over under was 56.5. I picked Ole Miss to win and to cover and hit the under. Ole Miss won that 28-21. So that checked all the boxes. Last game of the evening, we had Army at LSU. Now, I picked this game a couple ways. I did think there was a chance that Army could cover. That didn't happen. LSU won 62-0, but LSU handled that over solo over of 57.5. So LSU Tigers looking really good. Still a 2-loss team on the year, but they are undefeated at home and still have everything to play for because they still play Bama for the SEC West. And though it's in Tuscaloosa, Tennessee kind of showed, man, come out strong, hit Alabama in the mouth, score on them. With LSU, though, it's just that they're going to have to play some defense. So that kind of wraps up our SEC picks. We'll move on into second segment, power rankings. And as we get into that, let me go back and just plug this one more time, guys. My SEC Pride merch on my Bonfire store, bonfire.com/SEC recap. I've got it pulled up here on screen. I've got SEC Pride merch for every team here in the SEC. Team colors, outline of the state, mascot in the geographic location of the school. Really put some work into these, and I think they really look great. And I've got every style. I've got t-shirt style, long sleeve t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, and they're priced accordingly. So you can find any of those options for every single team. Even have women's cut t-shirts if you like, and have had several people jump on these here in the past week, which I greatly appreciate. Had some Tennessee buyers, had some Alabama buyers. So I'm definitely appreciative. Tennessee, one of my favorites. I really love the way the Vanderbilt one looks. Love the Texas A&M colors. And I think the South Carolina, that garnet on black looks really solid. Mizzou fans out there, check out the black on gold. LSU is popping with that yellow or gold on the purple. So head on over there again, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. It just helps me out. I make a few bucks off of each one of those. Just helps me pay for like website hosting and streaming services and all of that good stuff. So good looking out, guys. I appreciate you. All right, into our power rankings segment, headed into week 9. Now, I said last week there will probably be the most amount of shakeup in these power rankings due to some of like the matchups that we have, like the Tennessee versus Alabama, that kind of thing. So this week's look noticeably different from the previous, I would say 2 to 3 weeks. The top has not changed. I've still got Georgia at number 1, Alabama at number 2. But you'll see that I really dropped Tennessee. I had Tennessee sitting at that 3 spot because I still thought defensively they're good and offensively they've been good enough. That ground game is one of the best in the country. But I moved Ole Miss into that 3 spot. They're playing really well. Defense has some question marks, but they can pretty much score at will, except against elite defenses, which would kind of be your Alabamas and your Georgias right now. And then I moved LSU to number 4. They lost to Ole Miss. They're playing as well as anybody right now, and they still have a chance to beat Alabama, to take that lead in the SEC West. So Georgia number 1, Bama 2, Ole Miss 3, LSU 4. I put Mizzou in at number 5, and I'm not super convicted on that. I'm not confident that Mizzou beats Tennessee on a neutral field. Honestly, I'm not confident Mizzou beats Tennessee in Como. I mean, Tennessee has scored as many points as they've wanted to the past 2 years on Mizzou. I think they've scored 60 plus the past two meetings between these two teams. Could this year be different? Sure. But I'm giving Mizzou the benefit of the doubt right now based on how they're playing, kind of based on how Tennessee slipped it. Tennessee came out strong against Bama, but that second half, they just showed no fight. And to me, that's the difference. When you came out and smacked them in the mouth, and then at halftime, you just looked like you didn't even care anymore. And that's not going to win you a football game. That's not going to win on the road in the SEC. Mizzou is playing, I think, all the way through all 4 quarters. So I think that gives them an edge over 6 through 14 in these power rankings. So Mizzou 5, Tennessee number 6, and then I'm putting Texas A&M in that 7 spot. I do think Texas A&M is better than the back half of the SEC. I think they're better than Florida, better than Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State, South Carolina, as we'll see this weekend, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. I don't think Texas A&M is bad. I just think they're lackluster. They have some problems. They have a $75 million problem in Jimbo Fisher. That's another story. Number 8, I got the Florida Gators. Yeah, they're playing really good right now, but I mean, what's their most impressive win? I think still it's Tennessee. It's Tennessee at home. They scraped by a bad South Carolina team on the road. Credit, it was a road win. It was kind of a shootout. They did what they had to win. But they got blown out versus Kentucky, who is also a back half SEC team. So Florida is not playing so well that I'm comfortable putting them in the top half of the SEC. Let's see what happens this weekend at the world's largest outdoor cocktail party in Jacksonville. If they can hang in with Georgia, play Georgia close. Sneak peek, they're not going to beat Georgia. But if they play them well, maybe they kind of prove that, hey, they do belong in that top half of the SEC conversation. Now, Kentucky fans might not like that I have them ahead of Kentucky since Kentucky blew them out, but Kentucky got blown out by Georgia and then got blown out by Mizzou. So let's see, what was that Mizzou score? 38-21, 17 points. Man, that's not good enough. Sorry, that's just not good enough because I don't think Mizzou is that good. So if you're getting blown out by 17 at home to a team that I really don't have conviction is a top 5 SEC team, you belong in the back half. Number 10, I got Auburn. Just because the only team, behind them, I got Mississippi State, South Carolina, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. This is just where I don't change any of these up however you want. Maybe you got Arkansas, Vandy last, but like Auburn, Mississippi State, South Carolina, take your pick. Does it really matter? No, because none of them are competing for a spot in the SEC. They're not even remotely close, right? What are the standings right now? South Carolina's, next to last in the SEC East. They're 2-5 in conference, just above Vanderbilt, who's 2-6. Mississippi State's 4-3 overall. Or I'm sorry, I said conference earlier. South Carolina's 1-4 in conference. Vanderbilt's 0-4. Mississippi State is 1-3. That's a game better than Auburn, but I really don't believe that Auburn or Mississippi State is better than Auburn. And Arkansas is 0-5. So, put those last 5 teams in any order you want. To me, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't change the outcome of anything. All those teams are just kind of bad right now. So again, from bottom to top, we got 1 Georgia, 2 Alabama, 3 Ole Miss, 4 LSU, 5 Mizzou, 6 Tennessee, 7 A&M, 8 Florida, 9 Kentucky, 10 Auburn, 11 Mississippi State, 12 South Carolina, 13 Arkansas, and then Vanderbilt bringing up the rear. Moving on into the final segment, Week 9 picks. This is it. And I'm going to start with one of my favorites from a personal reason because I am a Tennessee guy. We got number 21, Tennessee, going on the road to Lexington. Sorry, got a hair in my mouth. Oh. I know that's great podcasting. All right, I'm good. Number 21, Tennessee, going on the road to Kentucky, a 3.5 point favorite, over under of 51.5. This is a game that Kentucky has owned, as everyone who follows this matchup knows. Kentucky's only won like 3 times in 40 years. They used to play for this awesome trophy called the Beer Barrel, which was, this giant oak cask that they painted the scores on. And by the way, last year I started this sweet lineup. I'm going to stand up so you guys can see it. It's backwards because I think my video is mirrored. But I put out a bourbon barrel t-shirt for this matchup. Last year, of course, Tennessee went full dark mode and won 44-6. So they are the beer barrel champs. I'm going to stand up one more time. So pending the outcome of this matchup, I will have some new beer barrel shirts out on my store. Again, bonfire.com/store/SEC recap. And you can pick those up. I'll tweet those out. I'll also put those in the link next week of the video. But win or lose, right? This is an important game for both teams. Tennessee's 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Kentucky's 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. Tennessee losses to Florida on the road and Bama on the road. Kentucky's losses, Georgia on the road, and Mizzou at home. Home field advantage for Kentucky. It's a night game, 6 p.m. In that cold stadium in Lexington. It's not the most daunting environment, but it is an advantage for Kentucky. They'll be up. This is Kentucky Super Bowl. People make Super Bowl jokes all the time. This is Kentucky Super Bowl. They want to beat Tennessee. They hate Tennessee. And guess what? Tennessee hates Kentucky. These two teams hate each other. It's a great rivalry. It's a great trophy. Bring back the Beer Barrel Trophy. For the love of God, bring back the Beer Barrel Trophy. It's time. Both fan bases want it. Just do it. I think if this were a neutral site game or if this were in Knoxville, Tennessee would be about a 7-point favorite, maybe 6.5. So I think Vegas is subtracting 3 for that home field advantage for Kentucky and giving Tennessee 3.5. And I'm just going to go based on history here and say that Tennessee wins this game and covers the 3.5. Is Tennessee's offense as good as it has been the last 2 years? No, it definitely isn't. But they've got a great rushing attack, which can open up things for the passing game. Joe Milton showed he can use his legs, had more rushing yards than anybody else on the team against Alabama, and showed some promise hitting Squirrel White down the field. So I think Tennessee is capable of opening some things up. I know Josh Heupel is going to have something scripted for those first couple of drives. Vegas has this at an over-under of 51.5 at the time that I'm recording this. So I'm really kind of feeling this game as a 28-24, just hitting that over, like 52 altogether. Still a close game, but Tennessee covering, right? 28-24, Tennessee covers, you hit the over. Vols get the win on the road. It's not as high scoring as maybe what fans are used to, especially not from that game 2 years ago when it turned into a shootout between Levis and Hooker. And Devin Leary has just not been that good. Kind of the same story as Joe Milton, just has not been that good. Receivers haven't helped out either quarterback much all season. So I expect this to be more of a run-heavy game, which for Tennessee, I think is going to play right into their biggest strength because that's what they do well is stop the run and force you to do other things. So give me the Vols to repeat again as the beer barrel champion, and hopefully I'll be rolling out some Tennessee-themed beer barrel t-shirts next week. But Kentucky fans, you guys win it. Those shirts are featuring you guys. So stay tuned. I play it fair. I'm a Tennessee guy, but I call it fair. And I'll pay tribute if you guys take that beer barrel. No doubt. All right. Next game up. South Carolina at Texas A&M. South Carolina 2-5, 1-4 in conference. A&M 4-3, 2-2 in SEC play. Now this line has moved. It was 14.5. Texas A&M now a 15.5-point favorite. I think that's just a few too many points. It is a great home field advantage. I do think it probably comes down to a couple possessions difference, but I don't know, 14.5, 15.5. That's just a few too many for me. I think Texas A&M's defense is good. They are going to absolutely obliterate South Carolina's offensive line. I hope Spencer Rattler wears some extra butt pads because he's going to be on his ass all night. They're not going to be able to get anything done, but I do think they take a couple shots and probably make a few things happen. Maybe use some special teams. You know how that stuff always goes. So over under 54, this is where I think this one is interesting. I do think that there is a chance they hit the over. And now that I'm saying this, I kind of want to take the under, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it because all South Carolina can do is score. They can't stop anybody. So they're going to have to take shots. I don't know what they'll do. But I know Texas A&M is going to try to take some shots because South Carolina's got such a bad defense. So I don't think South Carolina is going to stop A&M from scoring. I think A&M's going to be able to do pretty much whatever they want. But I'll take South Carolina to cover the spread. I know it says 14.5 here. It's currently 15.5. I'll say it's 15.5, whatever it is by game time. But Texas A&M will win, and let's go over. All right, afternoon CBS game. Florida lose. Okay. Number 1, Georgia. Florida. World's largest outdoor cocktail party, whatever they call it. They play for the Okefenokee trophy or the or whatever. All those dumb trophies. Georgia is a 14.5-point favorite. Florida's been playing better, sure. Has Georgia been susceptible at times this year? Sure. Is there any chance Florida beats Georgia? Hell to the no. No. I don't think so. I'm taking Georgia to win. I don't care about the spread. I'm just going to take the over. 47, or it's down to 47 now. It was 47.5. Give me the over. Just I'll take the over. Even without Brock Bowers, they're going to find other stuff to do. Georgia is. Florida, I don't know if they're just going to be able to run as much as they need to on Georgia, and all they can do is throw, like 12-yard sideline passes to Ricky Pearsall. So, like, it's just not going to do it, man. It's just not going to do it. So, give me Georgia, and I'll take the over. Second afternoon game, SEC Network, Mississippi State at Auburn. Yeah, let's shake up that back five in the SEC, baby. Fight for that number 10 spot in the SEC. Auburn's a 6.5-point favorite. Auburn doesn't have an SEC win yet, and I think this is it. This is going to get them to 1-4. Mississippi State will fall to 1-4 in the SEC. The over/under is 41.5, and that's such an ugly number that I want to take the under. Give me something super low scoring and ugly because Auburn's offense is bad. Mississippi State's offense is bad. Let them just both play defense and see what happens. Auburn wins, covers, and let's go under 41.5. Final game of the evening here. 6:30 p.m. SEC Network. Vanderbilt goes to Ole Miss. Number 12, Ole Miss, as a 24.5-point underdog. Over under on this game is 63.5. 24.5 is a big number. Vandy scored more than that on Georgia. So that's too big of a number for me to bet on. Could Ole Miss cover that? Sure, absolutely. But I'm taking Ole Miss to win and probably win comfortably, 2-3 possessions for sure. But I would lean Vandy to cover. I think no matter what, though, I definitely take the over on that 63.5. That's a big number for sure. But anytime you see a number that big, I like it to trend in that direction. So guys, that's it. Let's recap what we did. We talked Michigan football cheating, the Tennessee conspiracy theory that their signals were stolen by South Carolina to knock them out of the college football playoff. We checked out my awesome FSI football sideline investigator merch and my SEC Pride merch on the Bonfire store. Don't forget to go check that out. We looked at the Week 8 recap. Week 8 recap. Say that 5 times fast. The updated power rankings and previewed our Week 9 picks. I am excited as anybody for Week 9. We are almost to the end, and we have some great matchups. We've got the beer barrel. We've got the cocktail party. We've got the the losers bracket in Carolina A&M, Mississippi State, Auburn. Some great stuff to be excited about this weekend. So get out there, enjoy it. I will catch you all on next week's episode of the SEC Recap. Don't forget to like and follow me on Twitter at SEC Recap. You can donate to the pod. I've got the QR code up here on screen, and you'll catch me tweeting about the games all week long. I'll be back here to recap it with you next week. Stay cool. Have a good one.